Welcome, creatives, community, and kind folks, to RPG with DBJ. Of course, I'm your host, DBJ, and all of you who are able to take part in this show, excuse me, live, are the co hosts, allowing me to seem much more brilliant than usual. Now, today is World Building Wednesday, and this week we are talking about House of the Dragon, or at least things we can borrow, shall we say, steal for our tabletop role playing game experiences. And no, my face is not prominent. I thought I'd make up something a little cuter, so something that we can look at, and I try to be create something a little bit more visually stimulating that we can take a look at as we talk about borrowing some of the great aspects of House of the Dragon, which I personally consider extremely well written, and use them for our tabletop role playing games. And as usually happens, and one of the reasons why I prefer to have a week long generalized theme or thesis is because sometimes there are things that come up, and we, by the time the show ends, we're just like, um, the creative juices are like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to say this thing and this other thing. So yes, Kitty. Sorry. Another co-host, four-legged one. Her name is Sophie. So anyway, guys, we're going to talk about House of the Dragon and things we can borrow for our role-playing game, and how to shape our world or setting, or maybe some things that we hadn't thought about. Now, one of the main powers, I guess you could say, in the House of the Dragon is the fact that you have fragile, arrogant, young, old, um, inconsiderate individuals who have control of the the nuclear option. These are human beings, or humanoid beings, Targaryens, who, um, according to their own history, were probably a one of the most minor houses from where they came from, Volantis, which sounds very much like Atlantis. Allusions to that, of course. And so somehow, through magic or oracles or just damn plain luck, they decide to leave their home country and go over to Westeros and dominate there with these damn dragons, right? And so the dynamic between these individuals, there's one thing to have an a-hole running around your community that deserves to be throat punched. And then there's another reason when, if you do such a thing or even attempt to do such a thing, they have a 100-ton, fire breathing monstrosity behind them, that even if you were to eliminate the individual that is offending you, that the creature that they control or dominate or whatever can come along and just wreak havoc, right? And so I decided to come up with a number of random tables, because we can start to shift and change and answer some of the questions as to, in your world building, like how many creatures are there, or how do they control them, or what kind of creatures. We don't have to stick with dragons. I threw some dragons over here. um oops. I threw some dragons over here just because it would just look good, and that kind of thing. Yeah, over here in the corner, whatever, right? I decided to throw them over there, but I think the bigger question that I posed here is, civilizations are never safe with dangerous predators in fantasy worlds. Instead of elimination, i.e., hiring the player characters to go out and eliminate the dangerous monsters, uh, what if a concerted effort was made to dominate or domesticate these city ravaging beasts? What power does one have when an undefeatable monster is in the hands of fragile mortals? Now, the undefeatable part, that remains to be seen, because I have a couple of suggestions here, but the idea is that, when you talk about classic Dungeons and Dragons and zero level uh, human beings, putting in their hands tier two, three, and four monsters would be pretty interesting, especially based on various personality traits and things. So I use the classic questions: who, what, where, when, how, and why. Now the when part kind of eliminate it because I don't think when is necessary. Because when is now, right? Like, and so I came up with some ideas. Now the name over here came up with these two names. I had a brain fart, so all I could think of was like a chrysalis or a cocoon or transformation that could be thought of in two ways. One, that a transformation of these monsters from dangerous predators to things that we command, or it could be a transformation of society from fearfulness to power and comfort. It could also be a transformation of the individual, like the blending of the personality of the monsters with the personalities of human beings, and the subtle interaction thereof. Like, in House of the Dragon, there was a one of the characters. You, uh, I can't remember all their names. Um, Amond, I believe was his name, that had he had an eye patch, and here's this scrawny little kid, and then like a couple episodes later, there were years involved in it, but a couple episodes later, and it's like, wait a minute, why is he at least a head or more taller than his older brother? Like, what the heck? But part of that can be explained, like maybe he became a little bit more dragon, you know, I mean, they don't explain it that way, and they hired a really good actor to portray that, even though his height was a bit off. But it is kind of cool to see something like that and to see that blending. So, before I get back to the chat, let's go over like, oh, so the name Tsune is Ukrainian for cocoon, and Vahon Dracona is Ukrainian for dragonfire. And I thought a little shout out to Ukraine. There's that a add, oops. Let's add a little space in here, because you can't really see it. There we go. Let's do that. Now, something else that is, I think the Vahon Dracona sounds like a place for me. So I don't know. I would go into you guys helped me out yesterday with going to translate.google.com and just typing in some words and things, and that'd be kind of cool to make up some locations. But if I can zero in here, let's see if we can move this to the center. Um, so under who, like who controls these things? So I made a D12. D12s aren't given enough love, I think. So plus D12s are large enough to have enough for me, visually and organizationally, are you get the most numbers D12 with one die roll, so it's not weighted for one or the other, as well as being able to visually encompass all of it in one viewing. D20s are pretty good, but they can be a little bit long, and shorter than that, it feels like you're missing something. So that's my reasoning. I'm sticking to it. So under who, I have like bonded nobles, like bonded to whatever the creature is or something like that. Rich merchants could buy their way into power. Rare bloodlines is a very good one. That's like Targaryens, right? They're born with white hair. You could pick a species or a bloodline or heritage in your own game world, like elves or dwarves, or it could just be particular bloodlines. Excuse me. That have it, whether they have a physical detail or not, like white hair or I don't know, purple eyes or something. Focused ritualists, individuals that have like are using magic maybe to control them. Skilled naturalists, just going out into the woods and finding them. Trinket wielders, people who control magical items that can control these monsters. Maybe dominant abusers, um, which this might help the PCs out quite a bit. Like maybe the monsters are somewhat innocent in it's like yes, they may be dangerous predators, but maybe the dominant abusers is the only thing is to beat them down to gain their loyalty, and which the PCs could turn this the tables if they learn that information. And they can learn this information from a number of ways. Maybe if, for people, for example, that use trinket wielders, I could come up with a different name, but if they're wearing a medallion around their neck and that's stolen, that might be a way to disrupt the control. What else? We have a domesticated brood. So, for example, we have um, you know people who breed specific breeds of dogs, but they're not related to wolves, right? These are specific monsters that are bred to be domesticated, possibly. Local enforcers. These may be individuals who have learned the skill to control them, and they're the ones who have the power. Other people don't. Maybe there's a rebel faction that controls them. However, they're it may through desperation, maybe. Common bonds, like for instance, human beings that go to a kennel and find these animals, and then I had roll twice and combine. So let me get into the chat, talk to you guys. Is it Amon? Thank you very much, Dipman. Yeah, it was Amon. It's the AE in all the names. Amon, um, Damon, Amond, Damon, and then there's all like the Viserys, the Ceres. The show's not on air right now, and it's like, oh, their names. It makes perfect sense, but it hurts the head. But I'm glad you got in onto this before I could. Good local times. Yeah, you're all right. Uh, Gribble says ogre riding halfling barbarians. Oh, I've got a little bit of that in there. Don't worry about it. We got a little bit of that. Smart says magic users riding giant eyes. Hey, yeah, riding. Yeah, always with the thing. Gribble says knights with golems' armor, mech knights, noble iron houses and stone houses fighting the evil and disgusting flesh house. There, Absolute Tabletop has come up with AN Nexus, which is a fantasy version of mechas. It's kind of cool. Rebels says, by the way, I love random tables like this. I don't have the mental capacity to make them though. It's funny. I can punch out a random table easy, and I think other people probably would find them a little boring. And I try to, in my mind, I'm like, how do I get this out there to the public? I'll put the link in so you guys can take a look at it. I guess I don't know where to put it. I'll probably put it in the Discord, but I don't know. I could do these things once a week pretty easily. So like I said, so if Targaryens have white hair and control dragons, does that mean Drow control spiders? I don't know. You know what? That's that. I thought about that. That's not too far off. It's not too far off. Okay, so what else here? Let's navigate through what I wrote up here. So I got who might control these creatures, whatever those creatures may be, and we don't need to. Let's say this is in the corner of your current game world. Um, like at the bottom here, where I always like to put a roll twice and combine kind of thing, just to say that you know on one hand, there may be rare bloodlines that control them, but what if there's also like a rebel faction that has learned how to do the same thing? So you don't have to like lock yourself into one. There's always an exception to the rule. And George R. R. Martin is notable for always throwing an exception to the rule in his storytelling. And so yeah, maybe like bonded nobles, it's like, oh, everyone knows the nobles control these monsters except for, and then you can go into something else. So I decided to put in like, well, how do they control them? So one idea could be rare concoctions, like some kind of alchemical concoction put together, scavenge from the four corners, and then it's got to be boiled or aged or chant it over, some crap like that, and put it together and maybe feed to these monsters. It could be an effervescent or an injection or a tincture or any combination thereof. It could be bloodlines and birth. So again, how do they control them? Maybe just because the person is born with that ability, which to me, this tells me that there might be anything from uh, nursemaids to proctors running around the countryside finding those bloodlines or protecting them and or collecting them together because they need them for these monsters. Daily reinforcement is another thing. Maybe there's any number of things like you see this with horse ranchers, right? They exercise the horses in the stables. They brush them down. Maybe there's words spoken to them, some kind of training, but maybe this daily reinforcement is needed because if you lose that, you lose them. Enchanted items. This goes back to the trinket wielders. Maybe there's specific enchanted items that control them. Now, those enchanted items could be limited. Maybe they're from an ancient civilization, and there's only 48 of them left. There's only 7 parts to that rod, right? Or maybe there is a way to make new ones, or maybe there's a combination of the two. Like I don't know, there's a mage stone, and you have to bring the rod to the mage stone to enchant the rod to then control the animals, but you got to bring the rod back to re-enchant it. Like you could come up with a number of things like that. Selective breeding is another way to how they are controlled. Maybe there's only certain breeds of these animals or beasts or monstrosities, aberrants or something. And if you have the wrong breeding, you got to let them go or eliminate them or they become dangerous. And this could be a visual thing like, oh, only the ones with 3 red lines on their chest are the ones that can be domesticated. All the other ones got to go or something. Rituals in magic and selective breeding could also combine with who controls them because maybe only particular bloodlines or individuals trained could control specific ones. Rituals in magic, of course, controlling magic to, their eyes turn white or roll in the back of their heads to control them. How are they controlled? I put placated, not domesticated. So maybe they're not. We like to claim that they're domesticated, but they're not really. They're just placated by being fed and sheltered. That's about it. Like if they aren't continually fed and at least not harmed, gargoyles is a good example, right? Manticores and stuff. Like, yeah, maybe they're only nice to you because you're nice to them temporarily, but give it a couple hours and they might look at you as food and leave. Living sacrifices, you gotta have some rituals and uh, cultist and living sacrifices, or this could be a dirty secret, especially for a community that prides itself on its law and order and goodness and righteousness and justice. And like living sacrifices. Now, those living sacrifices could be voluntary, individuals that give of themselves so that keep these creatures in control, especially if they come from like the nether realms or something like that. Or it could be not by choice, sacrificing criminals or bloodlines or family lines that people don't like, the people in control. Periodic unrestrained release, it could be that the monsters really aren't that controlled, and you got to release them out in the wild before they come back, and there's nothing you can do about it. We saw that in Game of Thrones, where um, Daenerys, Dany had her dragons, and she didn't quite have the control you thought she did, or she even thought she did. Um, there's artificial containment. Maybe they are held in pens or stables or cages, or something is around their muzzles, or they have something, they wear a harness or something that, and they're chained down, and there's some kind of artificial containment to control them. Um, I'm thinking of elephants, where young elephants have a chain around an ankle that they can't break, and as the elephants grow larger, they can easily break the chain, but they don't because they still think that they cannot when because they're young. And then there's of course the psychic bond. Um, just like the bloodlines and birth, maybe there's some kind of randomized psychic bond between these great beasts and things. So yeah, and then I came up with a general list of like some random monsters and things of that nature that might be kind of cool to look at. But let me get back into what you guys have to say. Um, let's see. You guys always have a lot more to say than I. Okay, here we go. Dead Man says the vision of Escaflowne an anime series about a mecha in a fantasy world. I've heard that name before, but I don't think I've ever seen that. If you could find that, put that in the chat. I'll take a look at it. Vision or the Vision of Escaflowne, an anime series. Cool, cool, cool. I'm gonna put that up here. Because somebody else may know about that. Mike says, playing on the giant rider thing. What if captured giants need to be brought down by teams of men on horses with heavy ropes tying them down? A special helmet is then placed on the giant. The guy with the matching helmet controls the giant. Yeah, 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 yeah. I put that as one of the options, kind of options, right? Like with what did I say over here? Ogres, Ettins, and Cyclopses would fit in there. Giants, yeah, that instead of the war against the giants, it might be like the capture of the giants, where someone figured out like we can, one thing with giant monsters and like horses and elephants and camels and things like that, labor animals, donkeys and mules, is that they are uh, force multipliers when it comes to society, the building things, not necessarily war, but force multipliers and moving things, and having humanoids that are like 5 times your height plus to help you do things, even if it's against their will. Yeah. Even with the giants, like you could use like magic items. There could be special concoctions that hypnotize them to make them to uh, placate them and stuff. But anyway, under let me finish going to what you guys have to say, and then we'll move on. Yeah, matching helmets control the giants. I like that idea. And what a great way to give a clue to your players, at least the player characters, when they adventure, that the symbol on the helmets, they start seeing those symbols on the same helmets of the giants, but at different periods of time, and it's like, oh, I bet one has to do with the other. Mike says, and I see these helms for giants have no eye holes. They are fully enslaved. A free giant is an uh, apocalyptic event in a town or city. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially if they let go, they're just like, no, and just like start going wild. Everyone's like, hold him down. The city guard is just like, we've got our ropes and man catchers, get them. Gay Gribble says they don't ride, they control them like Mecha Godzilla in the Godzilla versus Kong movie, something Sonic. That the idea could be anything. I mean, it could be them riding on their backs in like a little pouch harness, or it could be them just walking in front of them with like a rod, being like, "Get the hell out my way! I've got a hill giant behind me." I like that. Zamar says, "I am always a fan of the whole take them from the home while they are young, so they are loyal to the ex rather than themselves or their family angle of things." Yeah, yeah. How devious would that be for humans like us going up into like mountains or wherever and stealing the children of giants? That's pretty. That's I mean we I don't know, we do that with animals, so it wouldn't be too far fetched in a fantasy world to do that with giants. Zamar says it opens up the idea of exceptions, rebellions, and the question of can you blame them if this is all that they know? Yeah, yeah, and especially if they want to, if they start stealing fire giant kids and the fire giants themselves are pissed off, I think they have a pretty good reason for being pissed off. Which would very very well introduce this great idea of like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Grapple says, or hybrids, mixing dwarves and gargoyles to make hybrids that take control of gargoyle packs that serve the dwarves. And here in my little list up here, let's see if we can. I guess I could make it bigger, but like, what do we start out with? We start out with manticores, gargoyles, and boulets. I had to organize this some kind of way, and I wanted to have enough choices. We've got hellhounds, wargs, and death dogs. I put together. Now, some of these aren't very large, but we can play with size, right? And the I kind of equate the size of the monster with with the reverse ratio of how many of them you would see. So with dragons, like why? Anyway, I got like kraken, elementals, tarasques. I don't know if you want to have Tarasques running around, but you could. Um, Wyverns. I like to call them wyverns instead of wyverns, but anyway, wyverns, drakes, serpents, dragons with limited capabilities, but all of them. Um, l- l- like House of the Dragon, and as the history in Game of Thrones, that or what is it, Blood and Fire, that there were probably dozens, if not hundreds, or even thousands of dragons at one point, and over time, magic has subsided. They claim that the domestication of these dragons, like where they live, only allows them to grow to a certain height, kind of like fish. There's some fish that only grow as large as necessary for their fish tank, and if they're put in a bigger fish tank, they will grow bigger. Small fish tank, small. That's a possibility as well. Plus, what they eat and are fed, in the wild, maybe they can grow bigger than the food items, the food and water that nourishment that humanity gives them. But also, when you have something like hellhounds, wargs, death dogs, maybe even gargoyles and boulets and stuff, maybe if they're smaller, maybe instead of a couple of dozen, maybe there's hundreds of them. Um, we got. I also put in griffins, hippogriffs, Pegasus. I didn't put Pegasi. I know that's what it means, but you get what I'm still talking about. I didn't put Pegasuses. But anyway, I decided to throw in this with stone, iron, and clay golems, much like I threw up in here elementals. Like golems is another thing that either maybe currently people are able to create them, or maybe they're ancient. No one knows where they came from, or they were used in a vast battle, you know, and now they've gained sentience and been released. Oops, wait a minute, hasn't that already been done? But you get the point, right? Maybe they were taken from old crypts or found uncovered from I don't know, when the accursed desert winds blew away and uncovered them, because I love myself some an accursed desert. You know that. We have down here ogres, edens, and cyclopses. Uh, let's throw in I did pick three. I started using three, but we're going to put in giants, basilisks, giant lizards, and dinosaurs. You got to have some of those. Maybe giant scorpions, spiders, ankhegs, basically giant insects. People riding on giant wasps or something, or bees, or maybe even butterflies. Dangerous ones: giant scorpions, spiders, ankhegs, giant centipedes, maybe giant moths, mantises, ants. Okay, then we got I put giant eagles, owls, hawks. Let's put in falcons, not lakins. I change it up and roll twice. So again, we don't need to limit ourselves to like a specific type. Thank you there, dead man. We don't need to limit ourselves to a specific type of monster at all. Where I mean, we could pick a theme. So a theme could be scaled creatures. So we could go with like, oh, I don't know. We could pick like some young dragons, maybe mix in a couple of drakes and serpents. We love ourselves some wyverns. What's drake, serpents, worms? I can't think of all snakes would fit in there as well. Easily slip in there. Basilisks, giant lizards, and dinosaurs also would count. And we could even something that was not done as well in Game of Thrones, done better in House of the Dragon, but has even more influence in the books like Blood and Fire, is that we could give personality and physical description to the monsters that normally we don't often do. So, for example, in Blood and Fire, the dragons had their own personalities, they had their own look, they had specific sizes. There were you could to even now you can look up like the bloodlines that were attached, because some of the dragons lived a lot longer than the people they were bonded with. So there may even be legendary stories told about some of these monsters, creatures, giants, elementals, whatever the case may be. And that may even be kind of cool because we often don't see, yes, we know we talk about like the big bad evil guy, right? Vampires, liches, wizards, mind flayers, dragons, demons. Like we talk about them, but Deadman says roll twice and combine. So you could get get 10 and 5 so you have giant scorpion dragons? Uh, I'm gonna pretend I came up with that and go, "Hell yes." No, no, dead man, you're right. Like, why not? Why why not? Now, honestly, when I wrote that, A, it's a default that I always put in, and B, I was thinking like, well, some people could have dragons, which I put down at number 5, and others could have giant scorpions, but I don't know. Mixing them together might be kind of cool. It would be pretty easy to do so, right? Like slap some fire breathing onto a giant scorpion, slap a scorpion's tail onto a dragon, and you're done. But I think adding a little bit more detail in there, like instead of classic dragon limbs, they have like scorpion limbs or something. Be pretty nasty and unique and confuse your players. So I'll take credit for that, even though I didn't do it. Thank you, Deadman. You guys are always smarter than me anyway. Um, Gribel says, and even smaller ones like Sturgis, people can feed them a little to train and make them docile, then use as guardians, pets, messengers, or to treat some diseases. I like that. I like swarms. I mean, listen, in real life, people train like pigeons and birds and falcons. Why not have swarms of ravens and insects and sturges and rats and things like that that people can control? And I think what's cool about doing this in since because we're talking about world building is that it adds another dynamic the player characters may have to deal with. Yes, the a-hole in the city constable that is constantly harassing the PCs, sure they deserve a couple of throat punches, right? But not if behind them is a 35-foot giant with a helmet that they can't see of it and that giant kind of mirrors the constable's personality and actions. Like the constable kneels down to a small child and then the giant kneels down in the middle of the street as well or something, right? Or the constabulary is like looks around in the place and points at someone and is like, you come with us, and everyone like turns their head and acts like they don't see anything, while the young lady's like, no, please don't take me, grabbed up by her leg and carried away or something. Like that's and the enemy doesn't have to be a specific adversary. This could just be a normal thing in their normal society, and the player characters are looking around like, whoa, if we cause trouble, we might draw a lot of attention to ourselves, so we might need to make some friends or at least not make any enemies. And I think that would be cool. Gribel says, or to inject medicines too, a potion of cure wounds, charge sturge flying around looking for wounded people they have tasted to heal and take a sip. I get sorry, I don't this isn't I'm thinking of like puffer fish sturges that like people I'm just I'm thinking of them as like little flying balloons for some reason with little proboscises on the ends of them. That thank you for the mental imagery there, but would be kind of cool though, right? Like there's nothing stopping us from if let's say we go with the what did I put here? Number 10. Giant scorpions, spiders, ant eggs, like insectoids kind of things. Who's to say we can't? Or maybe there's just a society of people that were like, we villagers are tired of having to hire outside, adventurers. We decide to dominate everything in our region, including what's in that uh that dungeon. And so maybe they decide to do the same thing. Mike says, modern example, Hellboy 2, Golden Army, golems controlled by a crown. Yeah, 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 yeah. And again, this could be something from the ancient past or tradition. Who she, or they, whoever sits upon the throne, shall then control the blank. Once the iron crown is put upon their head, they have mastery over something. And again, we don't have to deal with only dragons, but it could be a classification of things: plants, dragons, elementals, giants, oozes. I didn't even put oozes down there. Yeah. Zamar says giant scorpion dragon has already been done. It's called a Rathalis, male red and Rathian, a female green from Monster Hunter. I I did not know that. Makes sense, but I did not know that. Mike says, I have an out of the box. I have to mention something about that you brought up there, Mike, the other day. Anyway, I have the out of the box encounter. Name eludes me, where a formerly domesticated wyvern is found with its harness and tackle tangled in a tree. Now you have a captured but irate dragon to calm and release. And um, this is another thing too, like uh, and perhaps win through role playing. Yeah, what happens if okay, guaranteed your players, if you see these things domesticated, are going to want one. Why not? Why not offer this? This is clearly a treasure, air quotes treasure that they could find, something they could ride on, or a pet, or you know, um, or what have you. Why not offer it to them? Especially if the community they're in doesn't make them any special. I understand lots of game masters are a little bit scared of giving their player characters like giving them wolves or flying creatures and all that kind of stuff, but honestly it's why so many times you'll hear of actual plays where the game master gives them a flying ship or gives them a caravan with warriors in it or something. The only limiting factor is there's nothing a game master can give a player that they can't take away. Now, you don't want to be unfair about it, but yeah, there's nothing like if you give the player characters each their own pterodactyl to ride on, there's they're not special if they're in a community where it requires pterodactyl riding to get around, when everybody else doesn't have it. Now, Deadman says puffer fishes are known to contain tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin. However, for the dolphins, this toxin, according to experts, is known to create a narcotic effect when consumed in small amounts. Yes, yes, they dolphins get high on the toxin released from puffer fish, and I think that is so cool. That is so funny. I love it. I love it. Not Let's not mention that the same thing could be done in fantasy worlds, right? Um, there's a hallucinogen released by like a purple fungus or something or whatever. And I'm thinking that's not dangerous. That's something player characters would probably want to do. Um, some of these creatures might have ish a similar-ish nature to them, which is why maybe these creatures are being harnessed in the first place. Like, for example, maybe the creatures are not just used as defenders, but they are used um, to hunt other monsters. They're used as, again, force multipliers to lift, pull, drag, build things. They could be used as spies. The other day, Mike was talking about, hey, you could have an assassin's guild that just sitting in an open bazaar, just drinking some chai tea, and all of a sudden an owl swoops by just as the sun goes down and scoops somebody away, and they're like, can't blame me, but you pay me enough, something might happen. So yeah, they could be used as everything. So I made up two more tables here just to add some options we might not have thought about, or you could use for like your creation or whatever. Um, so here I put down like where are these monsters when they're not being threatening to the player characters? Where are they? So I put in, well, they're in every home. Maybe they're so common that everybody has one, like a pet. And now their power levels could be some higher than others, but maybe they're just like pets, giant spider sitting on the roof of the house, no big deal. Backyard kids playing with the sturges. I don't know, but maybe they're just roaming free. They they until they're called and used, maybe the people just don't mind. To them, it's no big deal that the basilisks are running around with like hoods on or something. I don't know. Maybe that's a terrible descriptor, but you get my point. Maybe they're chained protectors, so they are used as guardians and are chained down and protecting valuable locations. Maybe at the front of mines, they are chained out in front of the city walls. They are chained down at the foot of the throne, things like that. Maybe the stables are being stables. Stables being what did I write here? Stables being sheltered. I guess I meant stables uh and or shelters. That sounds better. So yeah, maybe they're stables, shelters, pens. Oh, I put that as second. Like stables and shelters kind of make sense, especially if they're used like horses or cattle or something. In walled pens might be a thing. Maybe they're, of course, if they have wings, they can get out of them. But if they don't have wings, maybe because they're so dangerous to other people, they're put in like pens or pits, pens or pits. Thank you very much for that. Maybe they're in cultivated habitats. So the monsters being used are normally in jungles, and although they everyone lives in the accursed desert, the jungle-like atmosphere of the oasis is used where they live. So maybe they're in a cultivated habitat with like plants and rocks and things like that, to give them a little bit more uh, feeling of peace and serenity. Um, excuse me. Wow. Maybe they're patrolling a general vicinity. Uh, the idea of dragons circling overhead. The other day, you guys mentioned like how dangerous would it be for the player characters to like fight some general humanoids and then look up in the sky and there are these things circling overhead and they don't know why. They don't know who they're bonded to or allied to. Um, and the circling overhead, there could be two or more factions, you know, uh, in opposition to each other, but they both don't want to go to war. And the player characters are like, wow, okay, that red giant eagle looking thing or falcon is different than the one with green tips on its wings and wearing a harness, which is different than the, you know, so they could be patrolling general vicinity. They could be within sight but resting. So as the PCs talk to that, you know, the constabulary that deserves to be throat punched, these monsters are resting they're within sight, but they're just resting somewhere as like almost like a hidden threat. With their nictating membranes closed or open. Maybe they're just resting underfoot, which makes them even more dangerous. You gotta have a big bad with their feet on top of a dangerous monster, looking like they're badasses. That somebody's got to do that. Maybe they're in the wild until summoned, i.e., we've seen that in Game of Thrones where the dragons fly away. Also in House of the Dragon, it was kind of assumed that the dragons kind of flew off on their own. Dragonstone, the place where they lived, they kind of like lived up in the mountainous regions until there was kind of a weird, maybe a psychic call or emotional attachment that would make them come if they were needed or someone was threatened. Or maybe they're grouped in packs, so maybe they just hang out together because of biology. They hang out together because that's just what they do, right? That could be a thing as well. Let me get back into the chat. So that was I was trying to come up with some. Yeah, Mike says presents a threat. All right, let's get back up here. Hey, TA. Let's go back into see what our co-hosts have to say. Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, "Well, if sea elves raise dolphins, do sea elves also have a puff now and then asking for a friend?" Puff, puff, pass. Gurgle, gurgle, blub, blub. Yeah. Al, you're nasty there. That TA's like a toxin that paralyzes people while a razor vine grows in its seed in the person alive, feeling it all. Ow. I'm gonna steal that and use that somewhere. Zamar says a giant harpoon is a great equalizer when it comes to powerful player pets. Yeah. 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 Oh, you think you're a badass? Let's look at the city walls with the giant harpoons, right? Game of Thrones proved that when the GM decided Daenerys started abusing her dragon pets. Yeah. 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 And listen, a good foreshadow. I know you're being funny there, but yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. You know what? Let the players know, like, hey, they control these creatures and they also have a way to stop them. Especially if the population knows that they can get a little bit out of control. It's like, yeah, the people walking around with the constabulary that walks around with the giant harpoons and the mobile threat assessment device. The ballista. Yeah. Thomas says if harness and modified is a manifestogen that enables the user of the chemical to manifest reality changes around them. I think you're off on the side, but okay, I'll go with it. This harvest of the paralytic is a key to why people would venture to the dimension. The reservoir is located, other chemicals found in them extend their life. That is all for my development of a world where Hellraiser is real, but the distortion of dreams has altered what Clive Barker saw, write his novels and movies. Ouch. Ouch. That's way out there. I have one of those cubes. I should bring it here one day. I've got a lament configuration. It's plastic, but it doesn't move. I don't have one of those, expensive ones that actually is a device. It's a translucent cube. It's like brownish with like gold filigree on the outside of it. Zamar says, "Me as a GM, yeah. Hey, players, get creative with your item use. Also, me as a GM, I feel free and happy to take away anything on your character sheet from you. And if it's not there, you don't have it." Yeah, yeah. Not that you want to do that, but Mike says, so if we're talking about bonded individuals like Pern or Avatar, okay, the bonded pair, like a rider and beast, may have to leave civilization and the herd, pack, or nest behind, as unbonded individuals may present a threat. Ooh, very much so. And I think that extends can extend to the player characters in the sense of they the easy thing would be we all see the posters, right? The great art where you see the giant, you always see a giant dragon, and more often than not, there's a young lady in scantily clad who seems to be air quotes bonded with the dragon. And the easy thing would for player characters are going to do is go kill the squishy thing, release the big thing that becomes not a threat. But what happens when the a-hole who is controlling the thing is the controlling factor? And if you kill that person, you create an enemy unto which hitherto has not been seen before, right? Like, maybe the dragon, the I don't know what, let me think of a good color for a dragon. Maybe it's non-standard. I can't think of a non-standard one. Okay, maybe the shadow dragon that the I'll go back to the constable has control of is only controlled because the constable somehow has bonded with it. And if you hurt the constable, maybe you hurt the dragon, and the dragon's not going to like that. And so navigating socially around people who their emotional state might be your life or death would be kind of cool. Also, what a great way for player characters to offend somebody and then go on the run and have um physical combat is a easy and immediate end result of failed or inappropriate social interactions. Because a lot of times, one of the difficulties of having great social encounters is that it leaves the combat focused people in the lurch. But if this is the kind of thing where, like Pokemon, everyone's got to have one, where maybe the player characters, to have a proper social introduction, maybe they have to have a little bit of a 3-round fight with a monster just to prove themselves, or to have the Thieves Guild even see you for a moment, to speak to you, to prove your worth or something like that. Or the Knights Errant won't trust you unless you go toe to toe with the um, I don't know, the white falcons that they use that they ride on, or the golden griffins or something. You know, Thomas Anderson says, kind of funny. The old man from the beginning of the movie giving the cube to Frank later turned into a bone dragon to get the burning cube too. Yeah, I remember him in the movie. Thanks, TA. But we're talking about House of Dragon for a moment here. So take that brilliance and turn it towards here. Um, Mike says, I think Pern raised the idea that the loss of one member of the bonded pair creates an almost suicidal despair in the other. That's also a possibility as well. Like what a great mission-ish to reunite a bonded pair that has been separated, or someone has lost their bond and now needs to find a new bond, and the PCs need to protect that person to get them to their new bond, because if they don't, the that monster or many more monsters, or maybe that just that individual, will succumb to their type of separation, depression, anxiety, and that could have huge ramifications, especially if you're talking Tarrasque level monstrosities running around, right? Like, we've got 30 days, you know, make it less than that. You got 3 hours. You got to get across the countryside and get them back together again. Or maybe one faction kidnaps one member of a bonded pair that allows them to control these monsters. So that's the great way to disrupt the thing, and maybe player characters realize that as well. Separate the twins, and you discorporate their power. So my last table here, I picked like why would, maybe not in the past, but maybe today, like why do would they bother having these dangerous monsters around them for any purpose? And of course, we have some common ones, but I decided to come up with some, maybe some divergent ideas. So social status is a good one. Even today, we have people who have many types of pets and animals for social status. They may claim it's not for social status, but it could be, right? To show, the fact that you have your feet up on a basilisk's back with your legs crossed is not just a threat. It could just be, yeah, because I can. There's also military might, of course. Going into battle with these monsters, and proving how powerful your nation is, or city state, or whatever, is also a good thing. Um, Surreptitious infiltration. Maybe they're used to gain entry to places that you normally wouldn't be able to. Now, this makes a lot of sense for criminal elements, but this could also be to infiltrate other communities. Maybe it's to fly overhead very silently and to gain entry into a place. Maybe these monsters burrow or swim, and this allows easy infill and exfiltration, especially if you have an aquatic community, people that live in the water, or maybe they're islanders or something. They are able to, dive underwater, come up on land, you know, capture people, steal things, threaten people, assassinate, and slip back out again. Um, Accumulation of wealth, maybe raising, training these creatures it costs a lot of money, and the ability to do so, like in today, being able to raise specialized animals and cultivate them makes you very wealthy. Or maybe the monsters themselves makes you wealthy because you choose not to use them against the population. So it could be accumulation of wealth. Protecting assets similar to wealth. Maybe there's something very valuable. Maybe there's the Five Kings Mountains, and there's a mine there, and it's to protect the mithril that's being mined under the ground, the gold or diamonds or whatever, and you need those monsters to protect your own assets. Protecting your assets, of course, can be protecting a population. It could be protecting something else valuable, a hidden grove of trees, the very concoctions that are used to control the animals could be very dangerous. The heart-shaped herb from Wakanda is important. So maybe there are monsters to protect that. Uh, Political advancement, of course. Those who have power tend to crave power, and those who don't have power tend to, attach themselves to people with power. And the Targaryens, no one said that they're very good rulers. We just know that they have dragons. Now, by virtue of them having dragons, they have political power, and so the cycle keeps going on and on. So, the people that control these monsters may have a lot of political advancement. It doesn't necessarily mean they're very good at it. Expressionism is just um, learning how to train them to these animals to do things. Trained, we and again using this off of real life. Trained animals that can backflip, do what you tell them to retrieve items, to maybe they make noises. Maybe they people gather together to watch them. perform tricks and things. This is more entertainment, but also the expressionism could be one of, how to explain this? It, expressing things that happened in the past so that the thing doesn't happen in the future. Um, this could be a display of power. We see nations around the world will gather together their military to express to everybody else, yeah, we're badasses, right? Tradition and legacy. It could be that this is done because it's always been done, and that's the way it should be done because that's how you do it. Despite the fact that it's dangerous to have basilisks or giant scorpions running around, or even dragons, which might obtain some kind of superior sentience. Maybe people do it because it's always been done that way. Threats and intimidation. Maybe people do it because they like to, intimidate other people and throw their weight around. And, this could lead to bad things, but, people that get bullied tend to want to have the ability to bully others, and bullies like to bully, right? So that could be a thing. Now this could be very localized, like internal rather than external, but who knows? And the last two, collapse of civil discourse. Maybe s- people aren't as civil as you think they are, and they're just using this to get their way. This isn't political discourse. This is, I don't like what you have to say, so I'm going to have you eaten. And this is just this is the beginnings of the collapse of civil discourse, where, much like here in the states and maybe even places around the nation, where people don't agree, so therefore violence, right? And lastly, labor, travel, and leverage. Maybe it's just, maybe again, it's just the fact that we need to build our society, and all it is just being used as it's just being used as um, um, force multipliers. We control these beasts because we need to get to resources to build our community, to build walls, to build homes, to travel in a caravan, to carry our supplies. Maybe it's not about war. It could be about defense. Maybe as a caravan goes through the accursed desert, these monsters surround the encampment because it protects them. But it's not about power or intimidation. It's just about travel. So anyway, that's just an idea that I had. I just wanted to share with you guys, just something, something out there. Let's see. Let me. How do I share? Um, let's see. Anyone with the link? View only link. There we go. All right, guys. Let me get back into what you guys have to say. And bam. Sorry about that. Gotta go back. Let's see. Sorry. I got a page back up. It's very strange. Here we go. Thomas Anderson says the rideability of entities that everyone has to have one for that society seems like a mirror of American social structured areas where you have to have a car or truck to survive. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's it is this idea, like, in order to live here I got to have the thing, and then I got to have the thing to live here. And even though I may not, maybe my family can't afford to have that thing, I still need one because I got to get along with everybody else. Especially if you talk about like nomadic communities, very much nomadic communities. Hey, you need a giant lizard to ride on, or one of these giant scorpions, buddy, or you're not going to be able to follow along. um as far as this bonus of the person they have to protect is hateable or evil, and if the reason why they are protecting them is that they are the only one who can prevent a disaster, extra credit. Yeah, extra credit if that person doesn't want to bond back with these creatures because they have trauma from doing so in the past. Ow. Yeah, A, this person's an a-hole. B, we need you to bond back together again because of the damage to the rest of us. And the person's like, I don't want to do that. You're like, oh my goodness, stop. TA says, I love the love the dynamic. It's not good and evil sides, but rather just both sides being normal entities, and survival is what pits them against each other, creating missions for the players that get muddy as they learn more about the other side. And I think that's the best part, if we can summarize this to the best part about House of the Dragon, is that yes, we can say to ourselves who we think is the good guy and bad guy, but everyone is the hero in their own minds. And maybe there's no evil, like the monsters, the people that are part of this community. Maybe they're not evil in the classic sense of taking over the world. Maybe they're just people. Now they could be dangerous, devious, underhanded, or maybe they're just the player characters are in media res. They're getting involved in a story in the middle. They don't understand why one faction is being brutal to the other faction because of something they did, i.e., they captured one of their kids and sacrificed them to one of these powerful monsters to gain control. And from henceforward, you're dead, right? The fact that the PCs don't know that doesn't mean that they aren't righteous in their desire to get revenge. It could be that they show up in the town and they just see one faction being revenge oriented against the other faction. Um, Mike says, getting back to the giant helmet controller thing, I always imagined that the rider was either in a backpack or even section on the back of the helmet. I like that idea, like a little turret. I have one of those. Oh, it's a WizKids model of a giant ogre, and you could put a small thing on the back of the ogre giant hill gianty thing, that where he controls him. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Deadman says one of the Pern novels was about a guy who lost his bonded dragon, and he kept trying to get a new bond established. He ended up stealing an egg and hatching a dragon in isolation. That could also be a problem too. Okay, not only do we have the breaking of bonds, and this was described in the Blood and Fire book, where when bonds are broken and you try to reestablish new bonds, can you do so? Maybe in this world, our world building, when a bond is broken, the creature is looking for that person to rebond with, and that yeah, Master Blaster for the Man Max Thunderdome, yeah. Not Hill Giant Poo power. Yes, but I mean, it could be that maybe the giant monster wants to rebond, and they're just sad, and the fact that they're sweeping their monstrous tail or breathing their fire on their doesn't have to be fire, breathing their breath weapon on everything is the fact that they're just depressed, and it's like, you know what, the best way to stop this friggin' non quite sentient dragon is that we need to get their bonded person back, even if we hate that person. Zamar says, assume that someone with power will use that power to do anything and everything, including to entertain the masses with all their might or to avoid doing anything at all. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To do anything and everything, including nothing at all. What if the person has a bonded monster, can defend the countryside, but they just don't feel like it? And the dragon sleeping, person sleeping. Hey, personalities start to blend together. The human starts to get very slothy, sloth like. Like, I'm not doing that. What do I gain from sending my magical beast in the battle for you? Like, because everyone's gonna die. Like, they didn't like. They never did anything for me. They always talk about me behind my back, don't they, Dragon? Dragon's like, yeah, they do, don't they? Such power would tempt one into expansionism and conquest. Yeah, either that or let other people do the conquesting and then take it from them. But which technically would be conquest in itself. But yes, I agree. Backstabbing. Yep. The level of decadence would influence how they exercise their power. When you are barely surviving, the power is going to be more prone to use to promote survival. But the further from a life of just surviving a culture they live in gets, the more that use of it changes. I definitely agree. That link you posted is not. It isn't. It isn't. I just okay. Let's see if you can see what I'm doing. I hit share. I hit view only link. click. Anyone with this link can watch this video. No sign. What? Watch this video. That's not what I wanted. I want temp template link. Click. Anyone with this link use this design as a template. Sign in is required, but you won't know who has made copies of this design. I don't care. How about that? Okay, so let's get rid of this link. I I guess it doesn't let me. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Um, I can't get rid of my own link. That's weird. All right, here, paste. Let's see if that works. That's weird. All right, here we go. Dragon Pilot, an anime on Netflix with a dragon that has to bond to a pilot. It has to swallow the pilot while it is acting, and it has mechanical parts that allow it to look like a modern fighter jet. What? Dragon Pilot? Jordan Jose. I hate that Canva thing. It, I thought it made sense about what I did. It's I don't understand. It says share. Oh, 5 second. I don't have a. It's not a video. Maybe did I use a template for a video? I don't remember using that as a template for a video. Anyway, okay. Oh no, Sharknado. Risking Sharknado comments. Imagine sharks that fly instead of swim, and Sahogan that are fully land-based. Use the Sahogan's natural affinity and ability to control sharks. Imagine shark cavalry. You're welcome. Yeah, yeah. Giant flying sharks the size of zeppelins, dropping airborne Sahogan into combat via parachutes. Yeah, all based simply by changing movement types. Yeah, yeah. Why not? Things that swim, literally swim through the air. Yeah, hell's yes. And I think we could giant flying sharks. And again, we can definitely play. We don't. There's nothing that's. We're world building, right? You don't have to stick with what's exactly in a book. You can change movement type, size type, intelligence type. You can change whether something can be domesticated or not. Like I put dragons in there, but you don't have to have air quotes dragons. And we don't need to define what dragons are. What a dragon is in your world doesn't need to be what a dragon is in somewhere else. And as we all know, we tend to name things what we think they are, not what they really are. So, what a dragon is in your world, it could be a giant lizard, it could be a dinosaur, it could be a basilisk. Um, what a wyvern is, people have made the semantic argument as to in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, they're not dragons or wyverns, and I'm like, no, they are what they are. People call them dragons, so they are dragons, despite what they can do. So, if in your world just because it doesn't fit into um, classic Dungeons and Dragons doesn't mean anything. It just means that in this world, this is what they are. And so, oh, the first was a video. That is why it worked wonky. The second now is the thing, but it is somewhat small. RPG. The first link is a cool video that when it stops is the image of that design. Really? Really? Okay, let me see. I got to see this. Oh. So this is what it looks like. Oh, wait a minute. Let me play it again. Let me like get it bigger. I see. I see. Hmm. Huh. Hmm. Huh. Different. Very, very, very different. Okay, let's see. Let's escape out of here and close this up. That's huh. Learn something. Do do do. Learn something new. Anyway, guys, have a great one. I'm going a little bit late here. I want to thank you guys for being part of the show. I appreciate it. World Building Wednesday. We're going to do third pillar Thursday, third pillar of exploration tomorrow, where we're going to talk about House of the Dragon and the environments that some of these monsters would live in, the places where people would live, right? Like, there's a possibility that you can't, if you can't bring the monster to you, you bring yourself to the monster. Yeah. Deep gnome sappers who attach themselves to purple worms, akin to the nomads in Dune attaching to sandworms. That's got to be a thing. Hell's yes. Oh, hell's yes. I thought about that before. I was like, why wouldn't they train and follow purple worms around, like grabbing onto them and stuff? And again, they don't need to be subterranean as well. You could ride on purple worms as I mean, I'm pretty sure purple worms and Dune probably had some relationship to each other, and there's no reason why they can't be aquatic or move around in swamps or anything like that. So, thank you, TA. Says thanks, have a good one, and the rest of you as well. Have a great day. I and all of our co-hosts here will see thee tomorrow, bright and early, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here at RPG with DBJ. Have a great one, guys. Peace.